Every leader, seasoned or new to leadership, is about to hear from one of the best officers I've worked with in 22 years. So grab your notebook, clear your mind, and be in receive mode.
You don't walk in day one for brigade command and thinking, hey, I know exactly what to do for the next 2 years.
Who has impacted you the most?
I physically, painfully learned that lesson.
If you want to go to school and you can meet everything that Colonel Hough just talked about, I'll get you there.
We, the leaders of the regiment, had broke trust with our formation.
This is Command Sergeant Major Mike Burke, and today in the studio, we want to welcome the 80th Colonel of the regiment, Colonel Hough. Today we'll be discussing leadership. The goal is to highlight the amazing job he's done as a commander in creating what I would consider one of the best teams I've ever seen. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Sergeant Major, I appreciate that introduction. I think it's maybe a bit inflated.
Oh, no, not at all. In fact, it's underinflated, sir.
I appreciate it. And I appreciate this opportunity. I will miss this place for sure. This is just another opportunity with this podcast to try to leave, one more thing behind. And just get that one more chance, that one more rep to say, that one last thing, that one last thing to the great soldiers and leaders of this regiment.
I think though, sir, I think you gave everything that you could possibly give as a human being, as a man, as a father, as a leader, as an officer to the regiment as a whole. There's a lot of different places we could start, sir. What was your first kind of thought and reactions when you found out you were going to come to 2CR? You've
been told that you're going to get to compete for a brigade command, and you get the list of the available brigades. And so I saw this list of all these brigades. And man, if you get a chance to go to any of them, I mean, what a humbling opportunity. I took it home and I showed it to my wife, and just right away we were both like, let's go to Germany. 2nd Cavalry Regiment. And what was funny is I had a couple of good friends, friends in quotes here. I'm air quoting friends. They're like, oh no, don't put that down. You're going to waste your vote. You've never been there. And, that place, and you've got to be known. You got to be a known entity. The reality is they had both been here and they were competing for it as well. They wanted the job. They were tired of talking me out of it. But I went ahead, I put 2CR down top of my list. And man, when I found out, everybody I knew in the Army that had been there immediately started coming up with that, like, man, you just won the lottery. I mean, that is the best place to go to Vilsec, to be part of the 2nd Cavalry Regiment, to lead that organization. And I think that's when it hit me. Like, you're excited, and you're like, well, can I really do this?
Okay.
I started looking in the news and seeing, man, these guys are all over Europe. I mean, they're an independent brigade. I saw what had happened with Sabre strikes in the past, or what were called the Dragoon raids at that time. And I'm looking going, wow, do I really have what it takes to go be the leader for that organization? You start to have some self-doubt.
Absolutely.
You go through a period of self-doubt. Yeah. You do. What really helped me was I got the chance to come over here and be here. So I got a chance to be here on Grafenwehr, working over at 7th ATC and kind of watching from afar. And that really started to help build my confidence, because you start to kind of understand the context of the regiment and what we do.
I think that's a benefit too, because I got to do the same thing, sir. I came over here about 6 months before I took over, 2nd Squadron originally. So you learn a lot of things. You get some kind of inside baseball, and you learn a lot about organization. Sir, talk to us about the team concept. Every commander's got a philosophy, but the consistency in your messaging and also how you messaged it was impressive, because you went to every single troop within the regiment. You did PT, and then you talked to them. And you talked to them why it was important to you and why you thought it was a key to success.
So command philosophy is pretty common in our Army. And I recognize as a commander, if done right, can be very powerful. When I've seen them be very powerful, it's because the commander truly owns it, is truly passionate about that philosophy. So first, I talked about that time where I was over 7th ATC, and I was working on that command philosophy. And it took me about 7 months to come up with that one word, to understand it and to develop for myself what those 4 letters would mean. If I was told, when you get to 2CR, you only get to say one word to them, what would the word be? And I decided my word was team. A team's got to have trust, man. I mean, that's first and foremost. There's got to be trust, from leaders to lead, from officer to NCO. That's one of the awesome things I think about being a cavalry regiment is when I see 2CR, there are 37 troop guidons out there, and they're all the same color.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They're all cavalry red over white, blood over surrender, right? They are. They're not, there's not infantry ones and sustainment ones and field artillery and engineer. It's just 37 cavalry guidons. And so I thought that was powerful. Then you've got to make sure that every soldier inside this regiment, everybody matters, not just the soldiers, the families. It doesn't really matter if you're a PFC or if you're a field grade officer in the regiment. We've all got a part. We're all part of the team, and each and every one of us matter. There's not a lot of brigades that get to do what we do, go all across Europe. We're where we would fight now. And we're part of the daily fight of assuring our allies and deterring our adversaries. And so everyone here has to be an ambassador for their nation. So I determined that's what the A was going to be about. Though it's got to be about trust. Everybody here's got to matter. You got to be an ambassador for our nation. Engage with our allies and partners. You know, your credentials as a soldier in the 2nd Cavalry Regiment, they're not in the center of your chest. Your credentials aren't your rank. Your credentials are your American flag on your right shoulder. Because you go meet with that allied or partnered army, they don't know what your rank is. I don't know what their ranks are. I just find the old-looking people like me and I salute them because they probably outrank me. And then lastly, you look at our regimental motto. It could not be more perfect. Always ready. And I looked and said, so then I've got an M left here. I got to come up with something. Hey, our mission is readiness. Yeah. And you can relate that. That's why every soldier matters. It takes every rank and every MOS across this regiment to get the mission done.
What's unique, too, about 2CR is you might be a sergeant, but you happen to be a sergeant that is qualified to train the trainer on the Javelin. And we'll send you up to Estonia, and you'll train an entire army on the Javelin weapon system. You're not just teaching privates up in the Estonian Army, you're teaching company commanders and battalion commanders and everything else how to use and employ those weapon systems. Well, now I have to ask, sir, because you did say motto. So we have an unofficial motto. We kill tanks. How did that come about, sir?
You don't walk in day one for brigade command and thinking, hey, I know exactly what to do for the next 2 years. I need to learn nothing else. Every other soldier.
There are people that think that, but you're not one of them. Absolutely.
Every day I've been here, I've learned something new. I learned from those around me. Coming in the door, I talked about team incessantly. I think for you and probably the squadron commanders and their CSMs are like, oh, he's going to talk about team again. But you got to keep repeating the message and everybody hears it. I sensed that everybody understood it and we were moving in that direction. I saw the culture start to change in the direction I want to change. And I started to ask myself, what do you next need to tell the organization? How can you put in a very short, simple sentence or just a few words the purpose of this organization and everybody else? And then, for our higher headquarters at the user level, there's some plans that we're a part of and so forth. And I looked at it and said, well, what would we essentially have to do? And I came up with, we kill tanks. That's what this regiment does. All 4,400 of us, every MOS, every rank, we, the team, we kill tanks.
Absolutely.
And that's it. And if we focus on that, if we are the Army's expert brigade at anti-tank, we win.
Yep.
We win. And that's what our Army does. I wanted to have a way for you and I that when that newest private arrived in the organization, that newest lieutenant or that non-commissioned officer that came from another brigade, I wanted to have a way when I just get the very short time to interact with them and welcome to the team, say, hey, welcome to the team, and just know we kill tanks. That's what we do. So they can hear it right from us. Where I hope to be a short bumper sticker I was looking for, is it sticky?
The other side of that, down to the lowest level, the young non-commissioned officers and, the first sergeants and platoon sergeants, it got them focused. You go through 350-1 training, you go through all the things that we're supposed to accomplish for DTMS, and the regimental commander's focus is that we kill tanks.
Think back to my commissioning source, and I remember a non-commissioned officer telling me that my job as an officer was to provide purpose, direction, and motivation.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, sir.
Right. At the end of the day, if nothing else, provide purpose, direction, and motivation. And my intent here, my hope has been, is that we kill tanks does those three things. It's purpose. It is a direction for the organization, and it's motivation to train.
Absolutely, sir. Who has impacted you the most?
It's not so much an individual who. I mean, there's clearly been individuals such as yourself and others that have impacted me. But I would say the group that has impacted me the most has been the team leaders and squad leaders. Everything in our Army we come up with, from 4-star down to me to all the way down to troop level commanders, gets done by a squad leader. It all ends up on the squad leader. One of my greatest desires as a commander is to prevent suicide in this regiment.
Absolutely, sir.
Because I just think it's a fight we can win. I know it's a fight we can win. And we had one about a year ago, and it stuck with me. Deep down knew that, man, we can do better than this. There maybe is not a more complex issue in our Army or in just all of humanity than suicide. I mean, the complexity of trying to stop another human being from the act of taking their own life, right? I realized that, okay, to really probably solve this, it was going to have to be the squad leader, because the other ones are truly with their soldiers day in and day out. That is so incredibly complex. Our most inexperienced leaders in the regiment, most of them have only been in the chain of command at that point for just a few years or less.
Yeah, they're still 20, 21-year-old.
Right. They're still developing as leaders. We're asking our most inexperienced leaders to solve our most complex problems. The human dimension, right? And so I guess it was sometime last year, I had an opportunity. We got all the squad leaders together in the theater, and we had a conversation about suicide prevention. So I decided this is where we're going to prevent it at. It's going to be at the squad leader level. So I got to do something. I got to start help mentoring squad leaders in this complex problem. And I remember being in that room, and at some point I just asked a question. Who here doesn't think this is their problem? I didn't get the answer that I anticipated. They said, absolutely. I want to own this. I want to be part of the solution. But what I'm asking for is help. I need help to get this done. I need to be trained. I need to be resourced. Man, that's my job. That's your job. That's what we do. We're responsible for training and resourcing. And so I walked out of there. I just felt so incredibly powerful. That was the attitude of our non-commissioned officers. And that's when right there, I was like, okay, we can do this. I know we can do this. And then we went to work right on the regimental staff of coming up with a strategy of how we could train and resource down to the squad level to prevent a suicide in this organization. And that's been incredibly important to me.
I think from that, there has been trust built in the organization. These younger soldiers can turn to any level of leadership, say, I'm struggling, I'm having an issue, and they're going to get the help that they need. That was a regimental initiative, but who's it going to be actually executed by? It's going to be executed by these young sergeants and staff sergeants at the end of the day.
Yeah, so I mean, you think about it. So that's why they have impacted me the most. Everything from that incredibly powerful topic we just talked about, suicide, to striker gunnery, right? I think about, we're the only striker brigade in the Army that has the 3mm Dragoon, the Crow's J. There's no manual to go to, but we all know those vehicles are owned by squad leaders. Every maneuver squad leader has one. And so we said, here's this platform. We don't have any manual on it. We haven't trained you on it. You went to no course at Fort Benning that taught you how to use this thing. But here's what I want you to do. Don't break it, maintain it, be safe, and train your squad to be lethal and go out and kill tanks. And so once again, the squad leaders continued to impress. I was concerned that that's going to wear off over time, and 6-8 months down the road, we're going to start to see, we're going to start to trit the knowledge here. That didn't happen. Our non-commissioned officers and our young lieutenants out there took this on with passion and started providing the ideas of, hey, here's a best practice on this. We tried this and this failed. Don't do this. I'm just as happy when people come and tell me about what doesn't work as opposed to what does work. I mean, you need both sides of the conversation.
So on that point, sir, you've created an environment where it's okay to fail. No idea is a bad idea. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But let's exploit the successes. Let's share it across the organization. Let's just constantly get better. Created this environment where the talent really has taken hold of the organization and accelerated the organization and what it's able to accomplish. I haven't seen that a lot in my career. What's your mentality behind that?
And just by nature, I think I'm a perpetual optimist. Our Army isn't perfect, but I think it is one of the most egalitarian organizations that you could become a part of. I haven't done anything special in our Army. I've done average things. But what I've seen in our Army is if you get a group of average soldiers with leaders that truly care in them, if there's that true commitment between leaders and led, a group of average people can do extraordinary things. I looked at how much the Army invested in me. If you commit to this team, we will invest in you. We won't limit you. The Army won't limit you. You're the limit.
Yeah.
How far do you want to go? There's some books out there that I'm a fan of, but I ask people to read. If I could leave behind a little bit of a reading list, there's a great book written by a guy named Michael Watkins called The First 90 Days. And I asked a lot of leaders in the regiment to read about it because it's this idea is that as you move between organizations or even as you fleet up inside of an organization, what's different about it? One of the things you got to be careful of, I think, as you move echelons in our Army to leadership positions, what you did in the last place might not necessarily work in the next place. Yeah. It's just a good book to help to conceptualize that problem and think through it. There's another great book out there called Leadership is Language. The gentleman who wrote a book too. At first talks about getting tasked to be a commander of a submarine that he had never been on before. Not that type of submarine. He realized he's the commander, but he's one of the most uninformed people about this platform that he's responsible for. Another one's it's called the Cotter change model. If there's any one constant about the Army, the constant is change. I didn't know what COVID was 6 months ago. None of us did. I mean, I had a whole beautiful plan for 2020. Oh, man. It was on beautiful PowerPoint slides, right?
We did have a heck of a plan.
Long-range training calendar, saber strike, all those things. I didn't know about COVID. I'm hearing about these things called murder hornets. I'm a little concerned. I got the original 3 shop looking into that. I will tell you, though, you'd asked earlier, maybe one of the most impactful people on me I've never personally ever gotten to talk to in my life. I was sitting in the brigade pre-command course, and the Sergeant Major of the Army came, Command Sergeant Major Daly. And I remember he was looking at all us, and at some point I think he just kind of looked at my direction. But he said, the most important attribute for you to go be a successful leader in our Army is humility. Yeah. Just be humble. Good. That was the word I was looking for. That was the concept I was looking for. That's what it hit me. I don't have to know everything. I don't have to be the all-star every day. Nope. I just simply got to go in there, tell everybody I care, take care of those soldiers and families, articulate the problems we need to solve, and let the talent of that organization find solutions. Once I realized that, I kind of took a deep breath and could relax, and was like, okay, we're going to do just fine.
It's something that I really, really wanted to highlight, sir, because I think every leader in our organization, from the junior NCO, even the people aspiring to be leaders, that are not quite in a leadership position, it's something that they can learn.
I'll describe some of my failures. I think as a commander, you've got to look at every failure and say, what was my role in that?
Right.
If the organization is what you say it is, and put your thumbprint on the organization, and it's this great team and everybody's operating with inside your intent, well, okay, if that's true, then if something fails, well, it was inside your intent. What was your role in that failure? I'll give you a great example. This is a small tactical example to make my point. We were Dragoon ready. It was our first rotation. I think this was in October of 18. We're a few days in there. We had a plan to jump the regimental talk. That's always a very sensitive thing. First of all, we're all learning. One of the things I learned right away was, man, moving that regimental talk, that's one of those things it's one of those decision points that should be on a big spreadsheet in the 3 shop. There's what we call CCIRs tied to that. I mean, it is a command decision of when and where to move that thing and so forth. And I had been out doing battlefield circulation, and we were in the fight out there in a few places. And I came back in, and it was about 2100 and it was raining. It seemed to me that there was a bit of a lull. And so I remember I looked at the Brigade 3 at the time, Paul Roethlisberger, and I said, hey, go get the XO. Let's jump the talk. Well, I didn't really have a plan. I had just, kind of just driving back in my striker. I hadn't really communicated this to anyone. I just on my own, in my own head, thought we should jump the brigade talk tonight. They're going to execute. They're going to do. They want the command to succeed. They want and the commander, gave us this task, and we're going to get this done. And but the 3 is like, sir, we hadn't really had an opportunity to recon. We don't know where this is going to go. And I was like, let's go do that. Let's go recon a place. And I remember I'm sitting in the back of my striker, and I'm on the headset. I'm talking to the squadron commanders. I've got the map board out. I've got the screen up there, and I'm watching the fight. And I do remember slowly more and more, I kept leaning more and more to the left, because obviously we're getting higher and higher altitude at a strong pitch here. And I remember it goes on for quite some time, and the striker's kind of lurching around, and we get to the very top, and the 3 says to me, hey, sir, can you get out for a minute? I get out the back of the striker, and it's like 2300, 2330. Bright idea cutoff time was probably about an hour ago. It's dark, it's raining, and he's like, hey, sir, we're stuck on top of this mountain down here. Like, there's this large hill down at JMRC. I mean, it's literally like a striker-wide road. We had driven like 8 of them up there. We go into playing striker Tetris over the next hour and a half of how to use this little B space in the dark, praying to God we don't roll the striker off the side of this hillside, trying to turn him around. And I think by the time we get back to the talk, it's now like 1 a.m. And I just realized I owned this failure. This was my failure. You can't just last minute turn the organization and come up with this idea. You can't last minute like, hey, let's jump the talk right now. There's a plan that goes with that. Troop leading procedures and all those things have still got to happen. So a lot of times I've seen you've got to be willing to let people fail, because I know that lesson for me now is ingrained.
Yep.
I physically, painfully learned that lesson by being part of it.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know if I'd have learned that lesson the same if I just set an AAR and someone described to me, someone else did this, another commander. It may not have stuck. Right. But man, that one sticks because I lived it. I did it. It failed. I learned from it. If you just have a fail because you were trying to meet the intent and you just didn't get it through and you just learned a life lesson, that's okay.
That is why we train. Pain is a good reinforcer of stupid things.
Yeah, if you've never turned a striker around in the dark under nods in like a 10x10 box, it's painful.
Like Austin Powers.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Let's talk about balancing family and work. That is a struggle at every level of leadership. As a regimental commander, even more so. There's many times where we'll look at each other and it'll be 1900 at night. We're like, wow, where did the day go?
Mm-hmm.
It is definitely time to go home. What advice would you give? Because I know you've struggled, we've all struggled, but what advice would you give to leaders and soldiers, how to balance the work and family?
I couldn't do this without my family. They are such a source of strength. Their resiliency for me.
Yeah.
They're all those things. And we all need to decompress and refresh at some point. And they're that resiliency mechanism for me. And I'll just tell you, coming here, I was worried. Because I had a couple people say to me, I had someone say to me, why are you taking your family to Europe to go to 2CR? You're never going to see them.
Said the same thing to me.
Right. So you're never going to see them. You're always going to be gone. And that really worried me, right? Because I mean, we've all got family. And when you've got family, you're committed to that family. And so I got here, though, and I realized that I remember asking myself, kind of just thinking one day and thinking to myself, well, wait a minute, who above me has told me to do that? Nobody. In fact, they're kind of in a nuanced way trying to tell me to do the opposite. Senior leaders I work for weren't telling me to go harder. They were telling me to take care of yourself, take care of your people, make sure we're ready. Those were the kind of things they were saying to me. And so part of it, there was just a sea change here in Europe. Inside of U.S. Army Europe, there was a time where we did have to be out there going and going and going. We were reassuring allies. But luckily for me, and in the time I think we've been in here in the last couple of years, that changed, and it became more about deterrence. And deterrence, in my mind, is about being really, really good. After this, I think I know how much you like combatives. If somebody's like, hey, when we're done here, we're going to go over to the fight house and look, there's a couple fighters in there, but they've had like one or two lessons. You want to roll with them? Oh, absolutely. I'll get on the mat. Let's roll. They're going down and choke them out, right? But if you told me, I said, hey, sir, when we get over there, former UFC fighter champion Uriah Faber's going to be in there. Well, I would probably find a reason between now and the fight house to have something else to do. But like, oh, man, I really want to do it. This just came. I just got this email, right? I got to go do this thing.
You got to call the CG.
That's right. I got to call the CG. That's deterrence, right? Being really, really good is about deterrence. And so as I started to come to regiment, I realized that we were in this new era. Change is the constant. And this new era for us was about deterrence. And deterrence meant we had to be balanced readiness. Think about it. You can do all the live fires you want, but if your striker doesn't leave the motor pool, if it won't get you to the Sawaki Gap, you're irrelevant. You're going to fail. If you get there and you don't have the supplies you need, you're going to fail. If you get there and your people aren't medically ready to be in sustained combat for days, weeks, months. That's what that's the kind of readiness we need. Or if you haven't taken care of their families and they're not truly mentally switched on because they're really worried about their family back at Rose Barracks or back in the U.S., those are all just as big a risk as not training enough.
Absolutely.
And so, of course, we got to train, but we've got to balance training with equipment readiness and supply and personnel and family. And so I came to that realization. That's what the M in that team. Our mission is readiness. It's that holistic readiness. And then I realized for me, those are all the tangibles and those are metrics you can measure and, okay, we're green, amber, red in this. But then there's also the intangibles. How about us as human beings, our mental health, our spiritual health? I know my personal physical health, it's tied to my emotional and spiritual health. And if me and my family aren't right, I'm not physically going to be right for very long. Yep. And so for me personally, I recognized I had to have personal balance. I had to have time with my family. They know there's times there's going to be ebbs and flows. There's going to be surges. Big exercise comes up, a rotation down to JMRC. If you got to go do the EFP mission for 6 months. But what I realized is I owed it to my family, which also meant then I owed it to every other soldier in this regiment, to them and their family, to make sure we had enough time. So what I've asked of the regiment is, look, we got to get this balanced regiment. The days we do work, they're probably going to be a bit longer. Yep. We all know generally here it's a 06 to 1830 kind of days are pretty typical. But man, we're going to protect those 4 days. That once a month, every month we get that 4-day Danza. I think we've taken every one of them in the last 2 years. And if your squadron couldn't take it, I've asked your leadership there to make sure you got paid back. It got on the calendar somewhere. Yep, you get that 4-day. Because that opportunity to have that 4 days to spend with your family, and truly, when I tell soldiers, I talk to soldiers about, I want every soldier of the regiment to have that European bucket list.
Absolutely.
It doesn't cost a lot of money to travel around Europe. It's worth saving up for. And don't take those 4 days and truly go make a memory. Go take your family, take your buddies in the barracks, take someone with you, and go make a memory somewhere. And to me, I come back from that 4 day, I'm recharged, I'm refreshed, and I'm ready to get all in again for another 28, 30 days.
That's great, sir. And I can speak. I've been in the organization almost 3 years. 3 years will be this fall. And, there was a pivotal change, and it was quality over quantity kind of mentality as far as the exercises go and the support and deterrence of the adversaries. But it's been huge for our organization because it's allowed us to focus on fundamental things and focus on families. One of the pillars of readiness is family.
Right.
And not every commander does that. They don't come in with that kind of mentality. And obviously, for you, it's kind of, you have a big family.
I do.
So you have to be there, and you have to be a part of that, especially with 3 young boys. So now it's huge, sir, and I think it's impacted the whole organization. Your desire to have your own personal balance has forced that down. Help the regiment as a whole. Okay, sir. So, one of the things that we talked about in the intro is that we were going to discuss leadership. Our desire with the podcast is always to make it relevant at every echelon. So, after 2 years of being the regimental commander, 20 plus years in the Army, what have you learned as far as leadership? And
from the day you come in the Army, from the day you become a soldier and then a non-commissioned officer, or you commission and become an officer, from your first interactions with the Army, you hear about good order and discipline. And you hear about these things. And I maybe for a while convinced myself I thought I knew what they were. I had to spend some time as a leader to really think about what they really are. And then the harder part then is, okay, now that I think I know what they are and why they're so important to us, how do you operationalize it, or how do you execute it? How do you change a culture? If you want your organization to have more good order and become more disciplined, how do you really do that? And so, because culture change is a difficult thing. In the Army, what I've learned here, and it really hit me here in these 2 years at 2CR, well, what really is good order? Well, I tell you, good order, routine things happen routinely.
Right.
That's good order. Because without it, you have chaos. Without it, everything's a crisis, right? There's no predictability. Nobody really knows what they're doing the next day or the next week. You're just constantly in a crisis because you don't have systems. And so routine things don't happen routinely. So everything's hard. I first thought to myself, well, the first thing we got to have inside the regiment is we've got to have good order, which means we've got to have systems. We've got to have systems that get us the results. All right. And so, for example, in terms of personnel readiness or training readiness and so forth, we got to have the right systems that are laid out over time that don't violate each other. Training can't take priority over equipment readiness. They've got to be balanced. Or all of it can't take priority over family readiness. So you could get balance first. All right, we're going to get balance first. But before we have gains inside the regiment, we had to have this foundation of discipline. So everybody's probably familiar with the Parthenon in Athens, right? A Greek Parthenon. It's got a foundation. It's got a hard, rock solid foundation to it. And on top of that foundation are pillars. And I started to recognize that in some ways I had my cart out in front of my horse a little bit. I needed to first get the discipline where we needed to be, so the pillars we put on top of them would stand strong. Discipline. Here's why. You can row the boat. You can work your butt off trying to make readiness gains, but if your organization is ill-disciplined, you'll erode faster than you gain.
Absolutely.
And so I could give you a great example. And remember, sometimes as an organization, we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to see ourselves. The first month I was in command, we had 18 DUIs. That was just the DUIs. There were also other sexual assaults, domestic violence incidents, all those things. We were going to lose a platoon every month. We can't afford every month to lose a platoon on the team to misconduct. Leader focus is diverted. If you're a troop commander or first sergeant, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, if you got that going inside your organization, you're focused on that and you're not focused on everything else and the culture you want to build. And so I recognized right away that we had a discipline problem.
Yep.
And part of it was because we, the leaders of the regiment, had broke trust with our formation. I felt like in some ways we were just saying, look, you're going to come here for 3 years and we are going to use and abuse and we're just going to go.
Everything else be damned.
Yeah, everything else be damned. We're going to take from you, but we're going to give nothing back to you. Right. Yep. And so I think part of what we had to do as leaders was stop doing that and say, look, we're going to invest in you. It's about you, the individual. It's about you, the family. It's about you, the organization. We're going to take care of you.
Yeah.
You matter. We're going to take care of you. But here's what you got to do. In every relationship is a two-way street, right? There's a give and take.
And leadership's a relationship.
Leadership is that's a great statement. Leadership is relationship. And we're going to vote first. Everybody gets an A from the regiment.
Okay.
We're going to invest in you first. Here's your 4 days. Here's your block leave period. What school do you need to get to? What can we do for your family? Tell me if you got a housing problem. And when we start talking about quality of life, let's make the barracks better. We built the second chow hall, got it running, right? Because the thing was overrun. Yep. We're going to improve your quality of life. But now here's the payback. You got to commit to the Army's values. You got to get on the team. Yeah. If you want the benefits we want to help create for you as a soldier in the regiment, for your families, this misconduct has got to stop. And I'm telling you, I could be more humbled by the sheer performance of our troop commanders, first sergeants, squadron commanders, CSMs, everyone on down the line to get that message out. It's not that nothing bad happens. Every now and then, someone still strays, but we're nowhere near where we were a couple years ago.
DUIs, it's well over 50%
right.
that we've cut. Sexual harassment, sexual assault. I mean, I don't even remember the percentage that it's down. It's pretty significant.
Right.
Just across the regiment, as far as misconduct, it's pretty substantial. One of the things you talked about was being an ethical person. So, when you talk about the misconduct and everything else, the only thing that is standing between you becoming command sergeant major
Mm.
or colonel is you.
Yeah.
And your ethical behavior. So, the good order and discipline aspect of it and just being an ethical person is important as well, down to the individual level, down to the soldier level. And if you decide to make the wrong decision, well, you voted. You're not committed to the Army. You're not, and as you said, you're not committed to the Army values. Because I firmly believe this, and we are the best that society has to offer. And it's not only in ethical ways, it's numerous other ways. The other part of that is we would have never been able to meet your intent as far as that goes, sir, if we had not slowed down. Because we just quite frankly wouldn't have had time.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to slow down and ask, who are we at our core? What's our purpose? Why are we here? Well, we talk about, we kill tanks. Why do we exist? But why are you in the Army? Why did you raise your hand? We talk about that, that Jerry Maguire moment, right? You had me at hello. You had me at I state your name. You've got my trust. I state your name. Do solemnly swear I believe you. I don't think I've ever met anyone who's ever served in the military, regardless of how long they stayed, that hasn't told me that it wasn't a significant pillar in their life.
Absolutely.
Your life, for our young soldiers, your life is going to go so fast. Even if you just do 4 years, the slideshow at the end, This is in there. There's a couple photos. What do you want those photos to be? Those other people in the photos, what do you want them to think about you? And so I'll tell you, you raised your hand, you took the oath, go all in, commit, be on the team. And for the Army, that means about discipline. That means live our Army values. If we live our Army values, we'll have a disciplined organization. Because then, that's that foundation. Once we have that foundation, then we can start putting those pillars of readiness on it. And we get better every day. We get just incrementally, just a little bit better. We get a little bit better at our PMCS of our vehicles. We get a little bit better at marksmanship, a little bit more physically fit. Our engineers get a little bit better at their breach operations. Across the board, at the top of that Parthenon, if it had a roof on it, it would just say greatness. That's where I'm talking about a group of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. If you got a team like this that's disciplined and committed over time, all that readiness, all that is going to compile up to a truly great organization.
Well, sir, when you get out of the Army, you can do your TED Talk on that.
I can do it. That's right. I can do a TED Talk, right?
The one thing I did want to come back and have you talk a little bit more about, sir, was about investment. You talk about schools as part of that investment. What's your kind of thought process behind that?
One of the great things about this organization, being forward deployed here in Europe, we're an assigned force. We already belong to the EUCOM commander because of how important this theater is to our nation, and because that there is a standing threat. We get resourced incredibly well, and what do I mean? Money. We get a great budget. Sometimes I think maybe some folks would think because you're coming to 2CR and it's forward deployed overseas, well, for my 3 years at 2CR, I probably can't go anywhere and go to these schools. That's absolutely not the case. You name the school, from Ranger School to Sapper School to MLOC to the Hotel 8 course to whatever professional development course you are seeking, we'll get you there, and we're not going to say no. You meet the standards. You demonstrate that you're an investment that we want to make, and we're going to say yes. I've been asked a couple times, like, oh, well, we've got this important exercise coming up, or there's this JMRC rotation coming up. So, I don't think we can send them. Oh, yes, we can. You cannot leverage the short-term health and welfare of the organization. You're going to make these long-term investments because they're investments in the people. They're investments in the Army, and they'll come back and be investments for us. So maybe that NCO was gone for 6 months and he comes back, and then he PCSs 6 months later. So what? His entire troop saw him get that opportunity, and maybe 2 or 3 others step up and say, send me. Yeah. I want to do that now. And that starts to shape and change culture, and people see the organization's committed to them, and it just takes off. As long as you meet the standards, we're going to get our return on investment. We will absolutely sign that packet and send you off to that course.
Listen, I'm just going to throw a tagline in here. If you want to go to school and you can meet everything that Colonel Hough just talked about, I'll get you there. If everybody's telling you no, come talk to me. Because there's not a school we can't get people to, and we want to send people. That roof that you talk about, that excellence, that greatness, that those schools feed into that, because they come back with that new skill, but most importantly, they also come back with a new sense of confidence, and they bring others up with them. That's a great segue into ESB, EIB, that we just finished. The thing is, when I talk to those soldiers that earn their badge, They talk about how much it uplifted their confidence in themselves and what they're capable of. And now they want the next thing. They want Ranger School. They want this and they want that and everything else. So.
Think about this. Something I think is so interesting about our profession. Think about doctors, lawyers, they have their own language and none of us understand it, right?
Yeah.
My doctor writes up some medical assessment on me. It's not written for me. I barely can understand it. It's written for some other doctor that I'm going to go see and so forth. If you talk to normal civilians that haven't had military service, they wouldn't know what you're saying because we have our own professional doctrine. And that's part of our credentialing. Think about you as an individual soldier. A doctor or a lawyer, they hang their credentials on their wall. They put that diploma, in a frame and they hang it on the wall and you see it. We as soldiers, we put our credentials, it's on our chest. When I see a non-commissioned officer or an officer with an EIB or an ESB, it's a credential. I am looking at that person and they are a credentialed professional. Now, I expect then professionalism and expertise from them. They have identified themselves as a credentialed professional. When I look there and see that Ranger tab or that Sapper tab or whatever it is, they're credentialed in that skill. And for our young officers and NCOs, that's why it's important because I could tell you at 2 a.m. or a set of nods in some other country when the rounds are live in the middle of a firefight somewhere, you know who your professionals are and you're looking for them. Because they're going to help you solve a problem. I was a rifle company commander, in Iraq in 2003 as we crossed. And my first sergeant, we knew who our professionals were in our organization. And there were times I said, hey, get me Staff Sergeant X, get me Lieutenant so-and-so, give me those people that are credentialed professionals. I know they have the skill set to do this right and solve this problem.
That's phenomenal, sir. That's a great way to put that. What kind of last little bit of advice would you leave for the leaders and the aspiring leaders as they go forward with the new command teams?
They need to listen. Every leader in our Army, every one of us receives information in a different way. Right now the regimental staff knows of it. For me, it's a one slider. I call it the one slider. Yeah. I'm a visual learner.
Yep.
I'm a conceptual learner. I want to talk about the concept and kind of get the big ideas, the intent down. And once we have that agreement, the relationship that this is the intent, I am very comfortable with the staff now running with scissors and just going and executing to meet the intent.
I have to say something funny about that. So if you go to the RCO's office, pretty much at any given time, you will see a mind map upon one of his whiteboards that looks a little chaotic to any other individual. And you will also see a lot of times Major David, the regimental RS3, or the XO, Major Coyle, taking that whiteboard with them to their office to transcribe it and make it into order and make it into kind of meet your intent. So, but it works. It does work. Sorry. I just had to add that because it's kind of a funny scene, but it works.
I think some of them are precious works of art, maybe. Probably going to see those probably down in Rome somewhere on the wall someday. But leadership's going to change. Going back to that, if there's any constants to change, take the time, really truly look at whoever your new leader is. How do they like to be communicated to? How do they receive information? Then I also personally think when you communicate matters as well. I'm a great guy to talk to in the morning. I'm a morning person. Let's get up, do PT, happy go lucky. You probably don't want to float something too heavy past me at about 1430, 1500. You might not be too impressed with the results because I'm not too switched on by then. And so just look at them and how do they receive information? How do you best communicate to them? When do you best communicate to them? So your first interactions, you get good interaction. You start to build that relationship with each other, build that trust, and it happens quickly. And that's important for the regiment. And it's important for those leaders.
On to other things. So where are you going now, sir?
So when I leave here, I'm going to go take command of an SFAB. So first SFAB at Fort Benning. Given my options of what to do next, there were staff jobs or there was, do you want to command again? I think command is absolutely a privilege. I've enjoyed every day of this here at 2CR. If I want anything, I just want more of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just don't want it to end. I love the relationships. I love coming and seeing the people in that headquarters every day. I love seeing you every day.
Well, thank you, sir. I don't think everybody agrees with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I do. I love our conversations. I just love the environment. So the Army gave me an opportunity to keep doing it some more. It has a different kind of mission. But I have seen some of our senior leaders talk about what the SFABs are doing. I personally think they're an important component of our Army campaign plan, of our Army strategy for some time to come. We've got to modernize our Army to meet a near peer or peer adversary, but simultaneously the demand of the combatant commanders, right? Those geographic places around the world hasn't really gone down. They need the Army today. Well, it's pretty hard to modernize and be downrange at the same time. And so I think in some ways the SFABs provide the Army the opportunity to do both. And so I know, for example, I'm going to first SFAB, which is responsible for South America. Other than the fact that I've never been there and I don't speak Spanish, I think I'm exactly the right guy for the mission. I see why they chose me, although I will learn the language. That's a personal goal for me. So I'm excited to do that. It's new for the Army. In my opinion, it looks a lot like 2CR.
Yeah.
It's you get a lot of autonomy. Yep. To really shape and build leaders, and SFAB's really, it's all senior leaders. It's a much smaller organization, but it's all senior leaders. And what I think is really cool about it, if you look at the statistics, I mean, they are making a whole bunch of future first sergeants and sergeant majors and battalion commanders and brigade commanders. And so I get to shape a whole bunch of future leaders. But I think that'd be pretty cool. And I'd go to a part of the world I've never been to and be out there and be competing with our adversaries in the battle space.
All right. So when you set up your forward operating kind of base in Belize, like you've talked about, if, I don't know, a hypothetical situation, let's say you were looking for, let's say a sergeant major, maybe a brigade sergeant major or something, how would any soldier, how would they get to an SFAB, sir?
The way to get there would be to send me and the SFAB Command Sergeant Major, which right now is Command Sergeant Major Dotson, simply to send us an email. I talk about that autonomy. That brigade commander and CSM have absolute authority to hire folks and get them on the team. So if anybody in the regiment's interested in that, send me a note, and I guarantee you will hear from us.
Sergeant Major Dotson's a lucky mofo, if I might say so myself.
Well, I appreciate that, Sergeant Major. I appreciate that. It has been an honor to serve with you. This regiment has the best Command Sergeant Major I know in the Army today. I've never met a sergeant major that cares about his soldiers as much as Command Sergeant Major Burke cares about the soldiers of the 2nd Cavalry Regiment. And so if you haven't got out, and if you haven't met Command Sergeant Major Burke, you are missing out. Just find him out there. He's out there every morning in PT. He's out at training events. He's around. Come meet your regimental Command Sergeant Major. It's worth the investment.
All right, sir. So what do you want to leave with the regiment? What's your final thoughts?
Don't let this pass you. Don't let this go by you. Regardless how far you are into your 3-year tour, I don't care if you only got 8 months left. Sit down and reflect. What more do you want to do? What more can you do for this regiment? And what more can this opportunity do for you? I cannot believe I am at 24 years of service because, man, I was a captain yesterday.
Right.
It has been such a great experience being in our Army. Even with all that I've gotten to do, I still look back at times and recognize there were other opportunities. I just didn't see it. I just didn't take advantage of it at the time. Yeah. And so I would just tell every one of our soldiers, look at the great opportunities you have here at Rose Barracks and the 2nd Cavalry Regiment. Don't let this just pass by you. Get engaged, come up with some goals, seek some mentorship from your leaders. But maybe if we can all do one thing, it's just to reach out to someone else and change a life. Absolutely. And I think that's a day well lived right there.
Thank you, sir.
We want to keep these going, but we want to make sure that they're engaging. If you have any ideas of anything that you would like to have us cover, please let us know, contact the PAO, and make your suggestion. Also, if you would like to be on a podcast, again, contact the PAO, because we want to bring soldiers in across the entire regiment and have them contribute to this. This is Dragoon 7, signing off.